Abyssal Murmurs. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next horror stories. Story 1, Night Watch, Nightmare on the Haunted Farm. This incident took place at a farm in Fresno, California, out here by Sanger years ago. My pa works for Slash on this Hung family's land because he grows them kush. My dad needed me to go help him on night watch this one night because Cambodians had tried to rob us. Earlier that day in the afternoon was when I arrived. I was sitting around. I saw this cute girl. She gave me a quick glance and smiled, then went on to feed their farm animals. I never saw her again after that. The day. Night came by, and it was just my dad and I guarding the corners. He had one corner, and I had the other of our area. We don't see each other anymore. My dad was nice enough to let me be in the car while guarding, and he could just sit on a chair on his corner. I tried staying up as long as I could, but dozed off around 1 a.m. This is when it gets creepy ass. As I dozed off in the dream, I woke up in the car where I dozed off and looked around. I didn't think much until I saw a girl in a distance in the front of my car. Then she started walking towards me. It was all pitch black and I couldn't see shit. As she got closer, it started to look like it was the cute girl I saw earlier in the day. But it was pitch black, so I couldn't be sure. I turned on my headlights, and OHMYFGOD. It was her, but in home clothing with a WAIRDFACE. Her face was like it wanted to murder me. I tried to play cool and act like I wasn't scared. I tried to ask what she wanted, and why was she up so late out here. She said nothing at all and ran towards me. She jumped on the car and tried to get in. I panicked and said, WTFUB, get away. She gave a big, last blow to the window, grabbed onto me, and that was when I woke up. As I woke up, I was sweating shitless and looked around. Just like the dream, it was all pitch black. I called my dad right away, and he picked up. I told him everything, and he said he'll get to me right away. It felt like years when he was running to me from his corner. It is about 100 yards on the other side around the field. When he came, he just stayed with me for the night, and I could sleep. The next day, my pa and I went to ask the owner and told him about the incident. The owner then said the girl I seen was his dead daughter that died a year ago. The corner I had to guard was next to the place of her incident when she passed. My dad was pissed because the owner never mentioned anything about it. We then went to a shaman. He told me that I am forbidden to go back to that farm. The girl was lonely and was my age and tried to take me with her, but I had a snake bracelet on my wrist. Those metal round thing a lot of Hung people wear on their wrist, so she couldn't literally take me away. He then tied me a red mix black string on my neck. End of story. Story 2, Hide and Seek at the Graveyard on Halloween. A good friend of mine told me the story. He and his other friends went to play hide and seek at the graveyard on Halloween. I didn't know him at the time, but this is what she told me. My friend took his younger sister to go trick-or-treating and went with his other friends as well. They went for a long time and got bunches of candy. Before they wanted to end their fun on Halloween, they decided to go play hide and seek. It was very late, and Halloween had come to the time where people on the block decided it was time to sleep. So they went to the graveyard and started to do the best out of 3 things with your hands. Unfortunately, he got picked as the seeker. He counted to 10, and everybody went to hide. Knowing that his little sister isn't a good hider, he found her first. He didn't even look at her to confirm it was his sister. He just assumed it was her and grabbed her by the arm, dragging her along where he went. After 30 minutes of not finding anyone, he called quits. Now, here is the part that got him scared the most. After he called quits, everyone came out, and so did his little sister. She stood next to one of his friends because she didn't want to be alone, he thought to himself, and counted everyone, and they were all there, standing in front of him. He realized the person he was holding wasn't his sister. He got so freaked out that when he turned to the little girl he was holding, he dropped his grip and took his sister, and all of them ran and never went back there. Some of them left their bags of candy. That's what I remember. If it was him telling the story, it might have been a little more detailed. Story 3, Cabbie. 23 years ago, we lived with my in-laws in the projects of Southeast Impulse. We had just gotten married in December of '99, and I was pregnant with my first son. It happened one early January morning after my husband had left for work. I was asleep when I heard who I thought to be my brother-in-law knocking at my door. Prior to getting married, my husband and his brother shared that room. His brother still had some of his clothes in there, so it was a regular routine for him to come in and get clothes every morning before he left for work. The hinges squeaked, so I knew that he opened the door. I was so tired and could barely open my eyes. As soon as I heard him come in, he left just as quickly. I went back to sleep, holding my body pillow. I was laying on my left side, facing the wall and away from the door. Suddenly, I felt it. It was spooning me. I could feel its skinny hands on my pregnant belly. It was not my husband's hands. This was not my husband. As I kept calling out to see if it was my husband, I felt, and to this day, I'll never forget. I felt its facial hair on the back of my neck. It spoke. He said, "You can call me Cabbie." I wanted to wake up from this nightmare. I tried so hard to open my eyes. I could see my pillow in front of me, but I could not wake up at all. That's when my bile really came into my room. I was finally able to wake up. Sitting up in bed, confused and scared, I said to him, either I had a F-up dream, or something is messing with me. We just shrugged it off. As my day went on, I felt really disoriented and paranoid, teary-eyed and scared, not knowing what to make of it. I personally had never experienced any paranormal activity or ghost-related experiences before then. My husband called me on his lunch break, and as I trembled with fear and anger, I told him what happened. We told his parents later that night. The history of the unit we lived in was rumored to be that 1 month or so before my in-laws moved there, an India guy passed away in that very same unit. His family was on vacation in California. My in-laws encountered many paranormal experiences while living there. When we married, they had lived there a total of 11 years or so already. Through the years, we moved in and out of my in-laws' place because of being young and broke. A few years later, we found ourselves living there once again in the same bedroom. And at that time, we had our second baby boy. It was a sunny and warm afternoon in May 2006. I was going on about my day as usual. I took my baby with me and went up to our room to clean up. For some reason, I felt like I had to really clean my room and make myself presentable as well. Anyways, I thought I heard a knock at my door. Assuming it was just my little sill that always followed me everywhere, I yelled, "Come in!" Seconds later, no reply. I opened the door. No one was there. I thought she changed her mind and went to play. I sat there applying my eyeliner. Then heard my sill's voice outside my door. She was talking to someone saying, "Yeah, the the girl in there. You can talk to her," referring to me. I opened the door to find 3 strangers there. They were some of the family of Cabbie. I was thinking to myself, WTF. They came from California and wanted to see the unit again. And the room their dad passed away in. Our room. Instantly I was pissed off. I hadn't been scared in so long. Now, here they come along and stir things up again. I didn't want to talk to them about my experience because it only meant one thing. Confirmation. Confirmation that Cabbie did exist. So I go on and tell them what happened. I told them in detail and how I felt a beard or mustache. That he said his name was Cabbie. They said he had a beard and he was a cab driver. Hence, his name. I go on and express how I'm still shaken by it. His daughter tries to reassure me. Oh, don't be scared. He was a very kind man. Oh yeah. Well, it sure wasn't nice of him to scare the shit out of me. They left, and for whatever reason, so did my in-laws. I found myself yet again in a daze, home alone, scared as hell all over again. I took my son outside and called my husband. I said to him, "You'll never guess what just happened." His reply after was silence, followed by bullshit. I told him to hurry up and get home. I sat outside with my son, too scared to go back inside. So, yes, it was real. Total confirmation that I was not dreaming or crazy. It's all true, and yeah, it was Cabbie who was telling me, "Go clean up your room," and who knocked on my door, giving me a heads up that his family was coming to visit him. Story 4, Apartment 203. I used to live in an old apartment in St. Paul. MN. When I say old, I mean OLD. The building was built in the 1890s and was once used as a retirement home. Here's an experience I had in 2010, right before I ran my ass out of my apartment unit. I was in my 2nd year in college, and I was looking for a cheap and convenient place to stay until the end of the school year. I spent about 2 months looking at apartments, but the prices were too demanding for my income at the time. I needed something affordable, so I crossed out 1-bedroom apartments off my list and started looking at studios. The studios that I found fit well with my budget, but I knew I would have had to live paycheck to paycheck. Without hesitation, I chose the cheapest one I could find, and I scheduled an appointment with the landlord right away. I soon signed a 6-month lease, which would have lasted until May. But there were unexpected events that took place before the end of the lease. My apartment description: 500 ski Ft. The entrance leads to a walkway. The kitchen is located directly on the right and is separated from the living room with a centerpiece wall attached vertically in the center of the unit. The bathroom is straight ahead of the entrance. I had a futon in the living room and a TV set right across from the futon. There is a long horizontal window that extended from the living room to the kitchen on the far right wall of the unit. Most apartments have those white twistable blinds, and this one had an especially long one due to the window's length in size. I moved in during the end of the first fall semester, and everything seemed fine, until my GF came over one day and pointed something out. Good thing she did. We were watching movies on a weekday night. The audio on the TV was loud, and we were very attentive towards the movie. I was still concentrating on the movie when all of a sudden, she asked me if I heard it. I was confused, so I asked her, "Heard what?" She turned down the volume of the TV and told me to be quiet. It was an awkward, silent moment, because I didn't hear crap. She told me she heard the blinds moving back and forth in the kitchen. I said, it must have been the wind. Of course. It was the middle of winter, so it couldn't have been the wind, and the window wasn't even opened. I was just trying to calm her down. She gave me a weird look, but in her head, I knew she was thinking, dumbass. We continued watching the movie, and she eventually fell asleep. I didn't think much of what she said, and soon fell asleep after. It was a few days later when I finally started to think about what my GF had said that night. I was watching TV, and was starting to doze off. It felt like a dream, but I knew I wasn't sleeping. I saw a shadow walking in the kitchen area. It was dark, so I wasn't able to make up the face, but I remember slightly seeing a long-haired figure with a bent back. I stood up, and with a bad gut feeling, I walked over to the kitchen and flicked the light switch on. As I thought, I saw nothing. I turned off the lights and walked back to where I was sitting. With my back turned towards the kitchen, I heard shuffling, and then the blinds started moving around. Right at this moment, I thought about what my GF heard the other night. Oh, shit, I thought. Every time I thought about what was behind me, I could feel the hair on my back raise up, as if my shirt was made of static. It was an unpleasant feeling, and I wanted to get out of there as fast as I could. With all the nerves and courage I was able to gather up, I quickly turned around to look at the kitchen window. I didn't see anything, except for the movement of the blinds. They seemed like they were forcefully moved around. I didn't bother to stick around to find out what was causing the blinds to wave back and forth. I grabbed my phone, wallet, coat, keys, and stormed out of there. I was so out of it that I didn't even lock my door. I drove over to my parents' house and explained to them what had just happened. My mom looked at me and knew that I wasn't kidding. She called my Uncle Che to come over to see what was up. Che was a well-experienced shaman. Right when Che came in, he calmly asked me what happened. I told him the story, and he told me he could sense spirits, but they meant no harm. He asked me if I asked a shaman to sweep the place from bad spirits before moving in. I answered no, and asked him if it was still possible to do so. Cho said it was possible, but asked me if I would actually still feel comfortable living there if he was to do the chant at my place. I gave it a long thought, because I didn't want to continue paying and living at a place that was haunted, especially in my unit. I told him, I don't think I want to live there after that. Shah, I can still see the image of the figure I saw, and it still creeps me out. Shah told me he understood what I meant. After that, he tied a red string on my left ankle and told my parents to Anib for me soon. That following weekend, my parents did as he said. When Cho was done with his ritual, he told me what was haunting my apartment. He said, "Did you know that your place used to be a retirement home for very old people who were bound to die sooner than later? Well, your apartment unit had 2 old ladies and 1 old man living there. The old man likes to sit by the entrance because his son always came to visit him when he was still alive. One of the old ladies sat where your V was at. She was harmless. The other lady sat by the kitchen window. The lady that sat by your kitchen window was the one that was moving your blinds. She had a mental illness when she was still alive, and she would always play with the blinds and laugh. She always stared outside the window with a sense that her family would one day visit, but they never did. She died at that very spot. I don't know if you've ever noticed your clothes getting a bit heavy, but if you ever did, that was her hanging on to you. It was a way for her to entertain herself. All of this wasn't hung. Of course, I was scared shitless when he told me that last part, because there were times when I felt like there was something tugging on me. Shaw told me that I was fine, and they weren't bad spirits. I felt relieved and a bit less tense after he said that. I went back to my apartment after that weekend to grab my belongings. Obviously, I didn't go by myself, lol. I went with a wolf pack, and we were able to pack everything quickly. My parents helped me pay for the apartment until the lease ended. I've since then avoided cheap places with a long history. Hope you all enjoyed it. It's a lot crazier when you actually experience spirits in firsthand. You might think you can handle it, but when it does happen, it'll feel like you're in a heart-pounding trance for hours. Story 5. The Lost Ghost. When my family lived in Banvinia refugee camp, we lived in District 4, Exumplab, by the market and the main road to the cemetery. As we all know, funerals in the old days last 7 days and nights, and there were no funeral homes. The bodies would rot and the tongues would stick out. In addition, there were no coffins, so the bodies were carried on wooden beds called dusnies from the house to the cemetery. Sometime the kwaluji, fluids from the rotten body, would drip as they carried the body to the cemetery. Every time a dead person passed our house, my mom would always cover my eyes and forbid me from looking because she was afraid the sight might give me nightmares. In addition, the main road that we lived on was known for sightings of paranormal activities, and the elders discouraged people from going out late at night. Now, to the real story. I have an uncle who loves going out at night to them huas and Kauji, going out to talk to girls with his friends. Note, he lives next door to us, and we will call him Tong. One night, none of Tong's friends were available to go out. However, Tong recently met a girl who he was madly in love with and did not want other guys talking to her. He decided to go alone to see her. Around 2:00 am, his girlfriend told him to go home. It was late, and she had to get up early to make breakfast. As Tong was walking home on the main road, he saw a young girl dressed in Hung clothes sitting on a log by the side of the road. She was crying, and her back was facing him. He was kind of scared, because he knew the road was haunted, but was curious, so he went up to her and said, "Tas mom? Ua casas and tuje tebno no koj ho tuaje quajja no tan tuje chu cav cj massive kojes is unshe love." "Sister, it is late at night. Why are you here crying?" "You should go home. Aren't you afraid?" The girl then turned and said she woke up in a weird place and was trying to find her way home. She begged him to help her. If she is not home by morning to make breakfast, she will get in trouble by her parents. Tong asked who her parents were. She answered her dad was in Swab Paoli. Name was changed in District 2. It was late at night, and Tong was scared, but agreed to help the girl, because he didn't want her to get in trouble. After helping the girl find her house in District 2, Tong went home. The next day, Tong was feverish and looked pale, but shook it off. He thought it was because he didn't get enough sleep. That afternoon, his friend Long came by to ask Tong to go with him to District 2. Long said that something urgent happened this morning to his aunt and uncle, and they have to Anib right away. When they arrived, it was the house where Tong dropped the young girl off. As the Anib progressed, he looked around but couldn't find the girl. He asked Long if his uncle has a daughter. Long told Tong that his uncle had a daughter, but she passed away 2 weeks ago. The reason they have to Anib was because last night his aunt and uncle heard someone entered the house. When they got up to go look, No one was there. This morning, his aunt woke up and saw her dead daughter cooking. Tung got very scared and ran home. He told his parents everything, and they have to neeb for him. The shaman told Tung that the girl didn't know she was dead and that she thought she was asleep. When she woke up, she was somewhere else. That was why she was wandering home, and Tung found her. The shaman warned Tung that she will come looking for him because her parents had blocked her from finding their house. Tung's family decided to change his name and Cabbie for next 3 days. Morale of the story: when it's pitch black outside and 2:0 in the morning, and then you see a Hmong girl in Hmong clothes crying on the side of the road. RUNYOURSSHOME. Story 6, It's Coming. A couple years back, when I just got married to my husband, we had bought me a big red stuffed dog for Valentine's. So, every morning when he gets up 5 in the morning to go to work, I would always tell him to grab the stuffed dog for me to hold to sleep in place of him, because he was leaving and I was going to be sleeping alone on the bed. Eventually, this became a habit for him, and every morning he would place the dog on his place before he left to work. Sometimes I would be too tired to even notice that he had already left, and the dog was there already. I slept next to the wall, where the window was, and at the head of the head was the wall. This one morning, I turned towards his side to hold him, but the stuffed dog was already in his place. So then I knew he had already left to work. I turned to the other side, towards the wall, and fell asleep. I woke up to the sound of something scratching the wall above me. I was so scared, because it sounded like a person with very sharp nails, just constantly scratching back and forth for my attention, but I didn't move. I didn't make a sound at all, just scared shitless in bed. I was trying to force myself back to sleep, and I couldn't. At that same time, I could feel that something or someone was inside my bedroom. Still turned toward the window, I didn't dare to turn the other way. I can see from the far corner of my eye that it was standing there, looking at me to make a move. I laid in bed very still, heart pounding as if it's about to race out of my chest. I waited to see what it was going to do. I could feel it shoved my stuffed dog towards me a little bit more and sat down at the edge of the bed. Then it laid down next to me. At this point, I wanted to just turn around, look at it in the eyes, and be the shit out of it. But though, to myself, I've never seen a ghost before, I don't think I'm really to see one now. Luck bastard. Lol, Jake. The dog was way closer to me than it was before, and you can tell that there was enough room for someone to lay there. I told my mill about it, and she said that it's probably just those ghosts the sights on you. They usually come when they know you're vulnerable, or if not, then they do things to you to make your heart weak so they can come to you. So, that explains the scratching on the wall. That night, my nephew came in our own, and he wanted to color. I took out some plain white papers and some crayons so he can color. After he was done and left, I felt too tired to clean everything up, so I just left it how it was on the carpet. When morning came and my husband left to work, he didn't bother to pick up the stuff either. While I was falling in and out of dreams, walking up back and forth, all of a sudden I heard someone coloring coming from the ground. What the F was all I could think of. Then I remembered, shit, the coloring stuff. You know, when you color on the carpet, you can hear it well. That was what I've heard, and it made my heart weak. Right then, I went paralyzed. I knew it was coming. To this day, when I talk about ghosts that sits on you, I still shiver because I'm so scared of it, knowing that it is coming. Story 7. After Dark. A fiction. I had just moved out of my home and into my new place for the first time. It wasn't too far from my mom and dad. It was about 30 minutes, but I was glad to be on my own. When I first toured the house, I was so excited that everything looked brand new, with the smell of fresh paint and soap-washed carpet. It went to my head, so I didn't notice anything else until I moved in and realized how old the place actually was. Sure, the kitchen and bathroom was updated, but the style of the house told of its age, which had to be at least 50 years old. It was a small house with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The living room and kitchen was separated by a counter. I really liked that there was a bay window that looks out to the front yard, even though there was a big oak tree blocking half the view. My first night there, I had just fixed a microwave dinner plate. I sat down on a beanbag on the living room floor when there was a knock at the door. Looking at my wristwatch, it wasn't that late, but already dark out. I didn't have a peephole, but a door chain guard bolted. I turned on the porch light and eased the door open about 2 inches to see who it was. It was a new neighborhood, and I didn't know anyone yet. There was no one there at all, nor were there anyone on the street, which was odd since it was barely after dark. You would figure 1 or 2 people would be taking their pets out, or something. A cold breeze touched my face and I froze. I thought I heard someone whispered, and I quickly shut the door. It was a humid summer night, so that breeze was out of place. I told myself it was nothing and tried to shake it off. I couldn't eat my dinner while watching TV, and after an hour or 2, I've decided to go take a shower and head on to bed. Suddenly, the house seemed so big, almost too big, that I felt a shiver of anticipation. I don't know why I like to turn the lights off when I watch television, but I do, and right now, the television was muted. I looked around me left, right, and left again towards the bay window. The blinds were drawn up, and I could almost swear I had put them down before turning off the lights to watch television, as I was paranoid of peeping Toms. I don't know why I felt dread in every part of me. When I stood up from my beanbag chair, the window was about 12 feet from where I was sitting, and when I walked closer and closer to it, I could see my reflection with the light from the television. I stared at my reflection and was about to reach for the strings that brought down the blinds when something caught my eyes. There was something a few feet behind me in the window reflection. I started shaking when I realized it was a supernatural being. In fear, my body wouldn't move to my command. It was terrifying that I couldn't even remove my stare, that its image has engraved itself in my brain. It was a woman. I could tell by her long hair and dark gown. I could only see so much, since the only light source was the television. Her hair looked like it was being blown by fierce winds, even though there were none in the house. I stared at her face, which was in shadows, and saw her start to smile. A menacing open-mouth grin with sharp teeth. She was covered in blood. I knew it was blood because I could smell it. Someone had cut her face from the edge of her lips to her ears. It looked like her jaw was about to unhinge itself, and all of a sudden her tongue seemed to roll out of her mouth and hung almost to the floor. I heard her rasp through her mouth like she was trying to say something, but the blood gargled her voice. Suddenly, the television shut off, and it was completely dark, except for the dimness of streetlights coming through the window. At that moment, I almost peed my pants. I couldn't see her anymore, but I heard and smelled her. I was suddenly able to move and started crying out of relief and fear, but could tell she was coming for me. So I ran towards the direction of the door. I encountered the wall and moved along it in search of freedom, sobbing at the unfairness of life. It felt like hours before I found the door and unlocked it. Flinging it wide, I grabbed the side of the frame at the same time, I felt an icy head grasp my wrist and shove myself outside. I ran without looking behind me to my neighbor's house and knocked on their door, but no one answered. So I kept going to the next and next. No one opened their doors. The next thing I knew, someone was waking me up. It was a policeman asking me if I was okay. I jerked awake. With wide eyes, I realized it was daylight, and I was outside. Apparently, I passed out on someone's lawn last night. I started to cry and told my story to the cop, then asking him why no one would help me. He turned pale at my story and told me that I didn't have any neighbors because no one lived on this street. There hasn't been anyone living here for years after a brutal murder of several young women, each of them slashed in the face. The person who committed them disappeared also. He thought I might have been the latest victim when he saw me during a routine drive. I begged him to escort me to my car and drove away from this place. Story 8. Ghost at the Theater. Follow me home. A couple years ago, my cousin was working as a security outside of the theater late at night. While he was standing looking around, he saw a black guy walked up to his car. He saw the guy walked around his car 3 times and stop at the passenger side and peeking through the window. So, my cousin ran up to him, tackled him, and pulled him by his shirt and said, "Sir, this is my car. What do you think you are doing?" My cousin looked right at his face. That guy have no eyes at all. My cousin was freaked out and let him go. My cousin ran into his car, called his boss that he's not working tonight and drove home. While he was driving, he was praying that the guy with no eyes don't follow him home. When he got home, he didn't tell anyone what happened and what he saw earlier. His wife said, "Wow, you're home early." He didn't reply. His wife grabbed his keys and went to get something from his car. By the time his wife opened the car door, he saw the guy all bloody from his eyes sitting at the back seat. His wife screamed, closed the door, and ran into the room. His wife been sick for 2 weeks, so my cousin called his dad to come over and deal with the ghost. His dad told my cousin that he followed him home because he was homeless and wants some food. Plus, my cousin have to go back where he saw the ghost, give him food, apologize, and tell him not to bother my cousin no more. Everything went back to normal. The next day, before he went to work, he bought some food and did what is told him what to do. From that on, everything was fine and never see the ghost ever again. Story 9. Lights turned on at strange hours in a vacant home. My family moved into a 4x2 home. My younger sister and brother slept upstairs with our parents, and my older brother and I slept downstairs. You had to go through a small office room and then down some stairs, which lead to our rooms. One night, my older brother went out, and I was playing on the computer in our office. It was quite late, and I started to hear whistling outside the office door. I didn't think much of it, and opened the office door, which leads to the hallway and the top part of the house, thinking it was my older brother being a dick. But the house was quiet, as everybody was asleep, and there was nobody there in the hallway, and I just realized, shh, my brother isn't even home. I quickly shut the door and just sat there. I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. A few minutes later, the whistling was back right outside the door. I panicked and ran to my room. After the incident, I tried to sleep with the lights on and was just tossing and turning in bed. Eventually, I fell asleep only to be woken up with a strange feeling that somebody was watching me. The hair on my arms started to raise, and all of a sudden my body went numb, like something or someone was holding me down. Even though I was wide awake, I could not move and was trying to scream as loud as I can, but could not. I started to cry, and the only thing I could feel were my wet tears. I was panicking. The only reason I broke out of this weird feeling was because my mom came in to check on me. I was known for sneaking my boyfriend in, and she wanted to make sure he wasn't there that night. Right as soon as she opened the door, I leaped on her. She asked me what happened to me, and why was I crying. I explained to her what happened, and she just laughed at me and told me I was having nightmares. Even though I asked to sleep with her, she said no. I went and slept with my younger sister instead. Mom and Dad didn't say much to us about the house. I guess they didn't want us children to be scared. In that same house, my sister said she woke up one night and saw a lady standing in the corner of her room, asking my sister to go with her, but my sister refused. Also, I heard our cat going crazy, and I ran to the lounge to see what all the commotion was. We had 2 leather couches, and my dad was sitting on one. There was an imprint of somebody's bottom, as though they were sitting there on the couch besides my father. Wondering why the cat went nuts, it must have sensed something. My father and I looked at each other and didn't know what to do or say. He told me not to tell my mother or the rest of the family. We didn't live in the house for much longer. After we got to know our neighbors, they told us the house had stood vacant for years. Even though nobody was living there, they would hear a woman screaming at night sometimes. Lights would be on at strange hours of the night, even though it was empty. Only after we moved out did we speak about it. My older brother said the reason he was out so much is because he got the same feeling that somebody was watching him, and he also experienced the same thing when he was sleeping, as if something or someone was holding him down too. There's more to my story, but it's too long. The neighbors were also nice enough to tell us that a lady was murdered there. Hence, why, when I bought my own home, I decided to build and not buy an established home. Real estate agents don't always tell you the history associated with your home, as they are there to make a sale. Story 10. Butte Hall. Base on a true event, because it happened to me, and it was my first time countering a paranormal activity. The building that I experienced from this event was called Butte Hall at Chico State University in California. The building has 8 floors, and it was built back in the 1950s or 1960s on top of a Native American grave. Decades ago, Butte Hall was used for studying human corpse. When a human corpse was brought into the building, the corpse was sent to the upper floors like the 7th or 8th floor in the elevator. I heard a rumor that Butte Hall was haunted. Students saw ghostly figures looking out to them from inside the building through the window and from the upper floors. I heard about the rumors, but didn't let it bother me because a person with bad luck like me will never experience it, right? Wrong. It was my 3RD year at Chico State into my business major. One afternoon I had to visit my professor to discuss about my grades and how to approach what to get a good grade. My professor's office was in the 7th floor in Butte Hall. I took the elevator up, like most of all other students who are going to the upper floors. No one wants to use the stairs, because by the time you get to your destination, you'll be sweating, or girls' makeup will probably be smearing off their faces from sweating. When I arrived at the 7th floor from the elevator, I got off and started to look for my professor's office. There were students walking by, and staff doing their own thing in their offices. Most of the doors are open and the floor seems to be lively. The 7th floor hallway in Butte Hall was like a square. Either way you go right or left, you'll end up where you started. The elevator was in the middle of the hallway, and the emergency stairway wasn't too far off away from the elevator. As I was looking for my professor's office, I walked away from the elevator to my left. I walked around the square hallway and couldn't find my professor's office. Again, I walked once more around the square hallway, focusing on each door number, hoping not to miss my professor's office. I came to realize that the hallway got empty. There was no students walking around anymore. I thought maybe they all went to class, or busy doing their own things with a staff or a professor. I kept on walking and realized that all the doors that were opened earlier were now closed. The service office was always open, but it was closed too. The hallway became so quiet. The only sounds I can hear was my breathing and my footstep walking alone in the empty hallway. Everything started to feel weird and eerie around me. I started to feel this heavy, eerie atmosphere surrounded me. I got creeped out and went back to where the elevator was, but there was no elevator. It was just a plain white wall. I searched for the stairways, but there was no stairway door anywhere. All doors were closed, and the elevator and the emergency stairways disappeared. I know I wasn't at the wrong side of the hall, but to make sure, I walked around the square hallway once more to make sure of it. I came back to where I started, and the elevator or the stairway exit was nowhere to be found. I got more creeped out and had a feeling that I was not alone on that floor. I continued to look for an exit by walking around the hallway a few times, and I suddenly saw a woman. She had her back facing toward me, walking away. The woman made a quick left turn on the next angle of the hallway. So I walked swiftly and made a left turn. Then I saw her turn left at the other angle of the hall. I thought to myself, this lady is fast, and I didn't think twice that she might be a ghost. I fast walked and made a left turn and saw her walking halfway down the hallway. The woman still had her back faced towards me, and I couldn't see her face. I rushed quickly and caught up to her and tapped her on the right shoulder. The woman turns around and I asked her, "Can you please show me to the elevator? I can't find the elevator." She replied, "Yes." When I turned around after tapping her shoulder, it seemed like everything went back to normal. I started to feel relieved, and I don't feel the heavy, quiet atmosphere anymore. Plus, the doors are opened again. The woman showed me to the elevator, and I cannot believe it. She took me back to where I first got off on that floor, and the elevator was there. I know the elevator wasn't there a while ago, but I'm just glad I found the elevator. I took the elevator down to 1st floor and didn't bother to meet my professor. I came home later that evening and told my parent about the experience I had, and they told me TJ Zom Dab Mpog Koji, Kog Muag Lamis Koj Thiaj Lion Riav, Siz Tau Tuxo J Kevtom, meaning maybe the ghost blocks your vision, that's why you couldn't find an exit. My first and last time I went up to the 7th floor in Butte Hall, unless it's AHAPETO. Story 11. The Dragging Footsteps. West Sacramento, SIA 1993. This time, I was 8 years old. Back then, there used to be a scary tales show that came on every Saturday at 11 p.m. I don't remember what the show is called. That night, my 2 oldest brothers, younger brother and I, stayed up to watch the show. My little sister, who shared a room with me, was sleeping in the room. By then, my parent had moved me to the bedroom next to theirs. During the middle of the show, I fell asleep on the living room floor. I was woken up freezing and saw my sister lying beside me. I guess she didn't want to sleep in the room by herself. Everyone had gone to bed, and I looked at the time. It was 3 or 4 a.m. I started to get scared because of the dark living room and the jingling sound experience years ago. I remember thinking to myself, those assholes just left me here. They didn't even bother to wake me. I was thinking of running to my room and shut the door. Then suddenly, I heard the dragging footsteps. There are carpets in every room except for the bathrooms, dining room, and kitchen. It was walking back and forth from the living room to the hallway. I laid still and listened to it carefully with my eyes shut, hoping it doesn't walk toward or beside me. Then I got the courage to stand up and was ready to run to my room. The dragging footsteps stopped as I looked at the dark hallway. Also, I saw no one. But I couldn't do it. I wasn't able to ditch my sister. She was only 3 years old at the time. When I laid back down beside her and tried to get warm, then I heard the dragging footsteps again. As soon as the footsteps went to the hallway, I got up and turned on the TV because I didn't want to hear the footsteps anymore. I laid back down with my eyes closed and hoped for the sun to rise soon. I don't know how many hours had passed, but I know I didn't sleep at all. It was still dark outside, and I heard my brothers open their bedroom door. I looked at the time. It was 6 a.m. As soon as my brothers came out and watched TV in the living room, I knocked out. My freshman year, it was on a Saturday morning. By this time, I got the twin bed to myself. My 3 sisters slept on the bottom and my 2 brothers slept on the top of the bunk bed. My 2 oldest brothers get their own room. I was sleeping at the foot of my bed with my head pointing toward the door. I don't remember why. I woke up and noticed that my siblings didn't close the door after they came to bed. Thinking to myself, those idiots didn't close the door. Oh, well, the sun is up already. I looked at the time, and it was 6 a.m. No one was up yet, so I tried to go back to sleep. Then suddenly, I heard the dragging footsteps once again. It's dragging slowly past my door, and it went to the doors of my brother's rooms. It was going back and forth. I rather hear things than see something I don't want to see, so I kept my eyes shut. I was kind of scared. But after experiencing so much things and lived in that apartment for 9 years, it doesn't bother me as much anymore and knock out. Story 12. Christmas Spirit. Last winter, my cousin passed away in her sleep. She was an only child and my uncle passed away years ago, so my aunt was all alone. For Christmas, our family decided that it would be nice to be with her. We wanted her to visit us, but she wouldn't travel, so we agreed to visit her instead. My little brother and I were going to sleep in our cousin's old room. My aunt had cleaned everything out in preparation for us. She put a mattress on the ground as well, so that my brother and I didn't have to share a twin bed. We put our suitcases in the closet and headed down to the dining room for dinner. I left first because my brother said he needed to use the restroom. After dinner, we all decided to turn in for bed. We got into town late, and the flight across the country was long and exhausting. When I opened the bedroom door, my brother and my suitcases were open, and our clothes and belongings were spread all over the room. It wasn't messy, though. Everything was laid out open and flat. I looked over at my brother and was about to yell at him until I saw the confusion and fear in his eyes. I asked him if he did this. He shook his head and refused to step into the room.
I started picking up the clothes and asked him to come in and help me.
Honestly, I was really scared and didn't want to be in the room alone. He continued to refuse. Part of me was angry that he wouldn't come help me, so turned over to him, ready to yell until I saw his face. He was whimpering, tears dripping down his chin. I followed his eyes to the closet. The little hairs on my neck stood up. Someone was there. I couldn't make out who it was, but someone was definitely there. I turned to my brother again and tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My body was so heavy. My brother ran. I heard his footsteps hurrying down the stairs. I tried to yell, but nothing came out. I turned to the closet again. I was able to make out more of the figure now. She was tall. I saw her long arms and fingers as she stood up from where she had been sitting. I swear I had stopped breathing at that time because I was so scared. She moved towards me. She didn't walk. She just seemed to get closer and closer. I heard my mom yell from the hallway, and then the door slammed shut. The lights shut off, and I felt the cold, long fingers grab my wrists. They pulled me violently. I heard glass shattered, and then the bedroom door broke open. Everything was a blur at the time. I just felt coldness all over me, and then I didn't. When I came to, my dad had his arms around my waist next to the broken window. I suddenly felt intense pain on my face and hands. My mom started wiping my face, and that's when I saw the blood. There was so much blood. My dad picked me up and carried me into the dining room. By now, I could really feel the pain. I could hear my aunt on the phone. She and my mom were crying. My brother was standing next to my dad, and then we heard the loudest banging I've ever heard in my life coming from the back door. My dad grabbed my brother and held me even tighter than he already was. The banging continued for about 30 seconds. I could feel the house rumbling with each pound. Suddenly, it stopped. When it did, I realized my mom and aunt were next to us now as well. We were all huddled together next to the dining table. My mom and aunt were hugging my brother. I could hear my mom praying, begging for help. We stayed that way until the police arrived 10-15 minutes later. We ended up staying at a hotel that night and then rented a house for the week. My aunt didn't come back with us immediately. She tried to fight through her fears and thought this was a one-time occurrence, but it wasn't. When she eventually came to stay with us a month later, she said she saw the tall woman outside in her yard a few nights. That her daughter's bedroom door would always be open every morning, even after she remembers closing it at night before going to sleep. The house was sold in March, and we haven't experienced anything abnormal since. Story 13. Whispers of the Reaper. The little girl named Red. I work at a nursing home as a nurse in memory care. Usually when someone is in the process of dying, a couple of residents will mention that there are little kids running around. It leads me to believe that kids are the grim reaper for the elderly. Anyways, we had a lady who passed away on Monday evening and on Tuesday night shift at 4 a.m. I was working as a CNA and doing my last round. I walked into a resident's room, and here's our conversation. Reese. Oh, there they are. Who? R. The two little kids. M. Where are they? R. Right next to you. M. Hair behind my neck stands up next to me. R. Yes. M. Is it a boy or a girl? R. It's a little girl. Very cute. Now it's only one kid. M. What's her name? R. Her name is Red. Me. Finished my cares and leave the room, thinking to myself, I must either be pregnant or dying soon. Now I'm worried. Story 14. The Last Goodbye. A haunting encounter on the Expressway. Greetings. This is a real story that occurred on or around October of 2021. This story takes place in San Antonio, TX. During the unfolded event, I was still a drill sergeant, DS, in the Army. It was a typical work morning. I had just finished with physical training with our trainee population. I was getting ready for the day when suddenly I received a text message from my commander saying that DSC, I'll call her C, had witnessed an accident and would most likely be late for work. Little did I know about the extent of what was about to unfold. A few hours passed, and I saw DSC coming from our female trainee dormitory. She looked shaken, so I approached her and asked how she was doing. She then told me everything that happened to her during her commute to work. According to DSCE, she was on the Expressway. For those unfamiliar with TX roadways, expressways run parallel to freeways in most major TX cities. They are meant to minimize congestion on freeways. Now, back to the story. She was on the expressway when she witnessed a man being struck by a car. She immediately assessed the scene for safety, and once all traffic had stopped, she directed someone to call the police. Apparently, the lady who struck the young man was utterly inconsolable. Being in the medical field, DC rushed over to the man and started performing CPR. I can't recall, but I believe she told me the man died on impact. I can remember seeing the sadness and sorrow in her eyes as she spoke of his final moments. She recalled feeling helpless while doing CPR, peering into his eyes and feeling a sense of grief and regret coming from the young man. Once the police and EMS arrived on site, they took over and took her statements. She told me she was just there for 2.5 hours, but it felt like an eternity. Once she got in her truck and started driving, she realized she was covered in his blood from doing CPR. DC also told me she felt his presence in her passenger seat. When she looked over at the passenger seat, she didn't physically see anything, but felt a presence peering back at her. This freaked her out a bit. Once she got to work, she showered and tossed her clothes in the dumpster behind our workplace. Then she walked out of the dormitory. This was after she had just tossed her soiled clothes. By then, we had stepped inside our work area in one of our supervisor's offices. She then informed me that she still felt the man's presence in the room with us. I was appalled, but not surprised. I turned towards DSC and explained to her what may have happened. This is purely speculation, based on my understanding of the supernatural and spiritual realm concerning death. I told her that potentially, right after this young man had died, his spirit probably latched onto her for comfort, because she was the first to express some emotional connection and provide him with some sense of comfort. This can happen, especially if it's a traumatic death, unexpected or not peaceful. He probably didn't realize that he had passed away into the afterlife, or was scared because it was unexpected. I then asked her if she trusted me. She nodded. I told her that we were going to pray. Now, before I go on, I want to say that my family still practices animism or shamanism. However, being in the military, I am exposed to multiple religions and am respectful of all religious beliefs. Now, back to the story. We both closed our eyes, and this is what I said. If there is any spiritual being in here with us, I want you to know that we're sorry about what happened to you. You are now dead and have passed into the afterlife. We know it can be a scary experience, but you can let go and go peacefully into the afterlife. Please do not follow DSC anymore. She was there to comfort you in your moment of need. However, you are scaring her. Please let go and pass into the afterlife. Thank you for listening. It's been so long I can't recall the exact words, but it went something like that. After our prayers, I asked her what religion she practiced. She responded that she was a Christian. I then told her to contact a pastor to get more help because they are more familiar with her faith. We then parted ways. A few days later, she stopped by to thank me for helping her through that moment. According to her, after our prayer, she didn't feel the young man's presence anymore. Story 15, The Other Side. This isn't a scary story, but more of an experience. Growing up, you would hear the Augs talk about the other side of the world. The story I'm about to tell is something I witnessed firsthand. My father had kidney failure and had to go through dialysis 3 times a week. My stepmother, Niamloj, passed away early 2019. She was my father's first love, and because of that, I saw how depressed he was since she passed away. Since then, my dad would tell my mom, Niam Yao, that he doesn't want to live anymore due to his health, and just wants to pass away and join my stepmother. Each day goes by, and you can see his health deteriorate. Fast forward to late 2021, my father decided he has had enough and decided to completely stop dialysis. Soon the unfiltered blood would take over his body. On the day he was going to leave this world, I was by his side along with everyone he loved and raised. As he got closer to his time, he began to gasp for air, almost like having hiccups. Some of his final words were, Kovyuov, Mus. Lov Sabtov Rubrubkov Sis Pubkov Nyob. I must leave. The other side is pulling me and won't let me stay. A short time later, my father said, Lov Hayes Komkuv Maz. Kuf Tisnov Neje Laum. They are telling me to go. I cannot hear you guys anymore. 30 minutes went by, and my father took his last breath. We had a grandpa that was there, and said the other side are the spirits who came and took my father. The reason my father could no longer hear us is because they had covered his ears, so he doesn't hear us telling him to stay and be with us, and our cry for him. To this day, I have always wondered what the other side looked like. It was something that had always stuck to me until this day. Thank you for always supporting the channel and welcoming its videos. Wishing you good health, and remember to subscribe to the channel to achieve 1,000 subscriptions.